What is inspiration in D&D 5e? Where do you get it? What do you do with it? Why does my DM never give it out? Hi, I'm Russell Kirkby, and this is my role-playing game channel, Sidario, where we talk about role-playing games with a general focus on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. My goal is to help players with a series of videos that cover the basics of Dungeons & Dragons, the core game mechanics, and how to relate those to actual role-playing. So if you've ever looked at a D&D 5e character sheet, you'll notice that there's a little box in the top right-hand corner called Inspiration, and if you're new to D&D 5e, you might be wondering what that is. The rules for inspiration can be found on page 125 of the Player's Handbook, and they're summarized in just 3 short paragraphs. Basically, as written, inspiration is a reward that a DM can give a player for good role-playing, which can then be spent to gain advantage on an attack roll, a saving throw, or a skill check. A DM could give inspiration for good role-playing, for clever tactics, for cunning use of the context and the scenario, the elements in the scene, for playing their character really well, for really understanding their ideals and their bonds and their flaws and playing those out in the scene. The DM might also give inspiration for really brave or clever maneuvers that might be risky but otherwise were in character and made the game more exciting and fun for the other players. What kind of situations would you want to use inspiration in? How useful is it? Well, if you absolutely need to succeed on an attack roll or a saving throw or a skill check, having advantage on the roll is not to be sneezed at. Here are some examples of how you might use inspiration. You're fighting the Mad Wizard. One of your companions is down to 0 hit points. They've failed 2 death checks already. You've got to make a medicine check to keep them alive. You're breaking into a vault. You've got to time your lockpicking check between the mobile patrols. If you roll a 1, your DM might be really mean like I am, and you might break your tools. You're escaping from the dragon's lair. The building is crumbling around you. You jump out the window. You're surfing down the scree. You have to make an athletics check just to survive. Now might be a good time to spend that inspiration. In all 3 of these examples, the player is using their inspiration to try and mitigate some kind of dire situation. Now, to be fair, a player can use their inspiration on any attack roll or saving throw or skill check, but it's probably a good idea to try and save those things up to use them wisely on a really dire, life-threatening situation. So the second way that you can use inspiration is that you can gift your inspiration to another player for good role-playing or clever thinking or something that's fun that you really liked, something that impressed you. They might be using their flaws or their bonds or their ideals in some unique way that you think is cool. Some DMs hand out inspiration like candy, and the main problem with this approach is that some players begin to feel entitled to it. So the whole point of inspiration, in my view, is twofold. On the one hand, you're creating a kind of motivation for the players to actually roleplay. And on the other hand, it's about giving the players a mechanic that operates a bit like willpower or luck or hero points or fate points to give you a sense that you can do heroic stuff. I mean, you're supposed to be the heroes of the story. You might often get inspiration from your dungeon master when you do something really clever, really innovative, or really meaningful. These moments will differ from DM to DM, from player to player, to group. You'll know these moments because they'll be literally inspired. Next, I'm going to give you some tips on etiquette before answering one final question on inspiration. Now, if you're checking out the links below, please subscribe and don't forget to hit the alert button if you want to get more of these types of videos. DMs generally don't like players that beg, not for gold, not for XP, not for magic items, and definitely not for inspiration. Instead of saying to your DM, "Do I get inspiration for that?" every 5 minutes, maybe you want to include a description of how you're using your bond or your flaw or your trait into your description of what your action is so that it's clear that you're role-playing your character. So an example of this might be, "I compassionately hold out my hand to the downtrodden beggar and offer my gold." Or, for example, "My emotional bond gets the better of me as I rush into the fray in defense of my village." This is a subtle cue to your DM that you're actually role-playing your character, that you know your bonds and your traits and your flaws, and they're not just something cosmetic on your character sheet. This gives the DM a real pause for thought and the ability to think about whether or not you deserve to have some inspiration. Now, you can only have one usage of inspiration stored at a time. That's why you have that little checkbox over in the top corner of your character sheet. And you can't do anything with it except for spend it or pass it on to your fellow players. So if your DM regularly gives out inspiration, maybe you want to consider handing out your inspiration to the other players too. We were talking earlier about how to use your inspiration wisely and how you might want to save it up for those dire circumstances when there's a life-threatening situation and things are getting a bit treacherous. It's the big dragon at the end of the campaign, for example. But on the other hand, there's a style of gaming where you might have inspiration a bit more regularly. You might pass it off to another player, and then that gives you the opportunity to earn more inspiration. So actually, tactically, it might be better to give your inspiration to a fellow player than to actually use it yourself, because then you've got two players with inspiration, and they can always give it back to you. So I like to give inspiration to people when they role play in some sort of significant way that actually is coming from their character, that really shows an understanding of who their character is and some sort of character arc and development. I also like to give inspiration to those players who are coming to role playing maybe for the first time, and they're just dipping their feet in the water and they're trying it out. And you want to encourage them to keep doing that. As a DM, you can gauge people's strengths and weaknesses pretty quickly, and it's not hard for you to figure out where their comfort zones are. So this is where you can use inspiration to really make some sort of effective change in your game, where you can throw them inspiration when they cross outside their comfort zone. They do something that's unexpected, and they start to learn that when they do these unexpected things, you're going to give them inspiration. After you've gauged the player's experience and you've worked out where their strengths and weaknesses are, now you can find ways of giving them inspiration that encourages them to work on their weaknesses. So if you've got players who are a little bit tentative about role-playing, and you can bring them out of their shells with a little bit of inspiration every time they do some role-playing. On the other hand, you might have players that are really good at role-playing, but they suck at combat, and maybe they're playing a tactician or a combat master or something, and they just don't really try to think about tactics. Well, maybe when they do try, that's when you give them inspiration. There's lots of other examples, but the point really is that you give inspiration for in the areas of weakness that the players have rather than in their strengths, because it's too easy for them. You're trying to inspire them. You want to see something inspired from them. Under any situation, when a player surprises you with something that is literally inspired, you should be giving them inspiration for that, because it's inspired. That's the whole point. That's why it's called inspiration.